Today's gospel really is a brilliant cartoon that illustrates the impact of the rich farmer's greed. The farmer's focus was on himself at the expense of land and workers and community. Think about where the emphasis was. What will I do? I have no place to store my grain. I will put my grain bins, I will pull them down and build larger ones. I, me, my. Unable to see an abundant harvest as a gift, greed effectively destroyed the farmer's network of interdependent relationships, his covenant with the earth, with his community, with himself, and with his God. It's worth reflecting on the relationship each of us has with greed and its antithesis, generosity. Greed, generosity. Looking around this Zoom and this room, I suspect that most of us are not guilty of the same level of greed that the rich farmer embodied. Proof is we have cucumbers here that Eileen has grown in her own garden. However, we all have our moments. Each of us are members of a society that is flooded with greed. How can we work within the limits of our reality to help others who suffer at the hands of greed? 2 Tuesdays ago, the phone rings, and it's our mom. Have you ever had that experience? She explains that the cost of her prescription eye drops has more than quadrupled from $120 for a 90-day supply to $586. She learns there's no alternative. Her doctor shares an 800 number with her and suggests she contact the manufacturer to see if she's eligible for a price reduction. Mom calls the 800 number and then, not really sure what to do, she frantically calls me and asks if I would call that number. Sure. It turns out that there's only a 5-page form that needs to be printed off the patient assistance website. And here's the information we need to gather. Think about how easy it would be for you to gather this information. Annual out-of-pocket medical expenses. Your federal tax return reflecting that you make less than $108,000 a year. Copies front and back of all insurance cards, Medicare, and then your private insurance if you have it. And a printout of everyone in the household's prescriptions from your local pharmacy. So I walk Mom through printing the forms. Plug in the printer, turn it on, open the document. Make sure there's paper in the printer, print. Oh, it's 2 documents. Go back to my email, open the second document. I also let Mom know that page 2 needs to be filled out by the ophthalmologist, so she can drop that off and hopefully get that done. Did I mention that my mom is 90 and my dad is 95? They're amazing. So I drive up the following Friday, create a spreadsheet, pick up their lists of prescriptions from CVS, and finish completing the forms and mail them. And last Tuesday, Mom receives approval for the program. Good news. So for the balance of this year, a 90-day supply of her medication will be mailed directly to her home. Instead of paying $586 every 3 months, her cost will be 0, an annual savings of $2,344. Then Dad decides perhaps I could help him. Can you see this interaction, right? He pays $5 a pill for his most expensive prescription. I go online and find that the company that manufactures his prescription has a program too. It's different. Theirs is all online, a fairly quick application, much more streamlined process, nowhere near the same level of detail. And rather than paying $450 for a 90-day supply, Dad will only pay $240 a quarter, a savings of $840 a year. Folks, like many of you, I suspect, I've written to legislators about the escalating cost of prescription drugs. And I'm grateful that engaging this process saves my parents $3,184 a year. 5 observations. Number 1, my parents own a home. They have health insurance. They have Medicare Part D prescription coverage. They never dreamed that they would qualify for reduced or no cost prescriptions. If the system can stress them, how bad can it be for others? Number 2, someone to facilitate the process is key. Reach out to your local council on aging and find out what resources are available in your jurisdiction. Number 3, the retail price of many common prescriptions in the US can run $800 to $900 a month. Who can afford that? Number 4, Big Pharma is greedy, implementing price hikes to what feel like unreasonable levels, often tripling and quadrupling rates year over year. And number 5, here is the good news. Most of the pharmaceutical companies have generous patient assistance programs. Each has their own criteria. They don't appear to be marketed very well. I can't imagine why. So even though we live in a world in which greed is all around us, the majority of people are generous. We can step in and offer help when people are being taken advantage of, and we can keep ourselves accountable. I want to conclude today with a story of triumph that honors our humanity and generosity of spirit. First, a bit of history. Looking around, I think most of us were alive in 1967, when I believe that was the year my youngest brother was born.
Wrong.
Wrong. When were you born?
7.
1967. Okay. A bit of history. In 1967, the same year Brendan was born, Judy Collins was so impressed by a young Joni Mitchell that she invited the 23-year-old to perform with her at the Newport Folk Fest. Last weekend, 55 years after appearing with Judy Collins, Brandi Carlile invited Joni to make a surprise appearance at the Newport Folk Fest. So at the age of 78, Joni Mitchell stole the show, singing 13 songs, including 2 of my favorites, Both Sides Now and Circle Game. If you haven't seen it, it's worth Googling, because, I don't know, at least those of us who came of age with Joni Mitchell may find we are unable to stop ourselves from singing every word with tears streaming down our faces. Joni Mitchell is more than an aging vocalist. And what made this performance so powerful was that 7 years ago, in 2015, Joni Mitchell suffered a brain aneurysm and had to relearn how to speak, how to sing, and how to walk. After the show, Brandi Carlile, who hosted the jam, said, Joni has looked at life from so many sides, and she came out of the storm singing like a prophet. I will never be over this. There's so much value and peace in our way pavers. Hold them up extra high. It's never too late. Brandy Carlisle and Joni Mitchell. What powerful examples of intergenerational friendship. My friends, each of us are blessed to be a blessing in the lives of others.